The vintage reel of the day, a Ryobi AD5000V. These are some sweet reels, man, but I've got a problem with it. There's a backlash on this dude. We're going to talk about how to get these things out. You ready to run a gun? It's time for blast off. Let's go. Hey guys, Ty here with you. Welcome back to Bassin 101. The dreaded backlash. Ooh. How do you get a backlash out of a reel? Well, there's a lot of ways of doing it. I think the way that I do it's the most simple. And I try not to get too complicated with it, because if you do, you'll end up cutting a line, trying to get this, that, and the other. You know, we've all been there. When I get a backlash, or actually I call them professional overruns. Don't tell anybody. I get backlashes too, guys. The pros get backlashes, they just don't tell you. So, when I get a backlash, what's the first thing I do? Well, once I see what's going on, the very first thing I'm going to start doing, I'm going to engage the spool, keep my thumb on the spool, and start gently pulling the line out. Just like this. Don't force it. Just gently pull it out, and if it stops, like it stopped right there, what I will do, I'll engage the reel. I'll take my thumb or my finger, and I'll start rubbing back and forth on the spool. Just like this right here. Back and forth, back and forth. Engage the spool again. Start pulling line. If it stops, I did it right there. If it stops, again, don't do anything else. Don't do your finger, don't do any of that kind of stuff. Now, if you see a loop, definitely try to pick that out and see if you can get that out, okay? But if you've got a really bad one, and braid's really bad about this, you're gonna spend some time on braid. I will crank the drag pretty tight, and then I will start cranking against my thumb. I want that spool going back the way it goes, but I want my thumb putting pressure on that spool, because what you're doing is now you're forcing the line against the spool like this in the opposite direction. What happens is, when a backlash happens, your spool's going forward, but your line's sitting still. So you're actually going against the spool like this. By putting your thumb on there and cranking against your thumb, now you're backing the line the other direction, the way it's supposed to go. And you just start cranking and cranking against your thumb. You need to do this about 4 or 5 times. Engage the spool, and now you can start pulling. And guys, this works almost every time. Now, if you don't want to sit there and pull it and do the plucking trick, go ahead and crank it down and go against your thumb. Go ahead and do that if you want to. I like to see if I can get it out first. Now, if I got to where I think it's moving pretty good and I don't see any loops in that thing, I'll stick the rod between my knees with the reel like this, and I'll just start going to town. I'll start doing like this until I get it about where I want it, and I smack the handle. That way it's locked in. And that's pretty smooth right there. Now, the next question. When you got all of this gumbo of line hanging out, how can you get this reeled up on the reel and not have it do like that? I go to the first guide on the rod, and I start stripping the line that's all piled up through that first guide. Just start stripping it down until I'm tight against that reel. And then as you're cranking it up, the guide is going to take the curls out for you. Always keep pressure on that line. Always keep your fingers on it. Put it back on tight. And man, you're back to fishing again. That's really all that is. It really is. And what I will do is, down the road, I will do a video on how you do a spinning rod, or a spinning reel blowout. We call those blowouts. We don't call them backlashes. They're called a blowout, because your line is going off of that spool. There's a way to get that taken care of too, and I'll go over that one day with you. But I hope this helps with the backlashes, because guys, I'm telling you, this works just about every time. It really does. And on braid, you're gonna work at braid. I mean, if you've got a really bad backlash in braid, you might just want to take that thing home, maybe take the spool out of the reel and go sideways off the reel and start stripping your line that way. That's probably going to be your better bet if you can't get it out in the boat. I mean, if it's buried down in that spool, trust me, it's locked. So you're better off, to get that spool out and start to unwind it and maybe pull it off to the side to get everything on there. And then wind it by hand, okay, by hand. Put it back in the reel and strip the line back off so that you can crank it back on that reel the way it's supposed to go. Because you'll never get that back in there. I mean, you can. You can put the spool back in there and then thread it back through the guide and take all that line and pull it through the guide. You can do that. That's nothing wrong with that. You can do it either way if you got braid and you can't get it loose. But that's how I do it, guys. Monofilament, fluorocarbon, braid, that's how I do it. So I hope this helps you guys out. I hope it saves you a lot of money in fishing line. And the best way to prevent a backlash, don't do it. Like Bill Dan says, you got a backlash in your reel? Don't do that. So until next time, guys, may the Father bless you and keep you in Yeshua's name. And as always, fish on.